Hey, we are Dr. Shane and Liz Watt, and welcome to the Be Healthy Naturally podcast.
We are doing this podcast because we are trying to bring knowledge and education to create a new way of thinking about our health.
Knowledge is the key to live a happy, healthy life, and our goal is to help you live your best life.
Thank you for being on this journey with us, and we hope you enjoy this episode.
Kelly Dyches is an ADHD and executive functional coach who helps people move from feeling stuck and overwhelmed to clear and in control. Using a holistic approach, she teaches practical skills for following through time management and organization, while also supporting mindset, nervous system regulation, and overall well-being. Kelly helps clients build personalized tools and systems so that they can work with their brain, not against it, and create real, lasting change naturally. So welcome, Kelly, to the podcast. We're so glad that you're with us today. And, before we get into stuff, can you kind of tell us a little bit about you and how you got into this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have ADHD, but I didn't discover my ADHD until I was doing some research about 7 years ago. I'm trying to help my son. I was looking for tools to help him to understand him, and I came across the DSM-5, which is the diagnostic criteria for, mental health disorders.
Which every kid in the world would be ADHD from the,
Yeah, you would think, absolutely. So upon me reading the symptoms, I realized I had every single one, and I had had it my whole life. And so I got the formal diagnosis and then decided to go on a deep dive. I got official ADHD coach training from ADCA, which is the ADD Coach Academy. And then since then, I've gotten some extra training through Coaching with Brooke. She has a program called 3C Activation, and so I've gotten extra training through that. So it has been quite the journey learning the inner workings of the ADHD brain, how it impacts every aspect of life. But in my observations and maybe anecdotally, I've seen there are a lot of different things that can help ADHD, and it doesn't have to be medication every single time. So.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I mean, there's, in fact, medication should be a temporary, occasional thing instead of a constant, long-term thing. I mean, that's the reality. It's because these kids, to me, the thing that I've always said is these kids then grow up thinking that drugs are their only answer, and far too many of them then when they get older go into things that they shouldn't be. I mean, if you look at prisons, and I think a lot of times that happens just because of the nature of ADD type individuals. But I mean, I think I saw a number one time that over 80% of all prisoners were ADHD and different things like that. Stuff, just craziness. But I think a lot of it is because and parents do this not as a. I don't think it's as a as a slam to their kids, but they do it trying to make sure their kids take their meds, and they're like, hey, you have to do this, you're not okay if you don't take it. And so then they grow up thinking, I'm not okay unless I'm taking something, and then they take stuff when they get older, and it usually goes into a lot of times it goes into the non-prescription medication and self-medicating.
Sure. I think with ADHD, there are so many tools and skills that you can learn to manage your ADHD, but those are often not taught. We don't learn them in school. And so you're expected to kind of white knuckle your way through life with this very busy brain that's often very impulsive. So it can lead to some addictive traits for sure. And I'm not surprised by that statistic of people ending up in prison, unfortunately.
Well, I cannot even say that I'm an expert in ADHD, which they used to call ADD and ADHD, but now they just clumped it all into one, ADHD. And I cannot say that I'm an expert at it, but I will tell you, I am a mom of a lot of kids, 5 of them boys, and we've had to struggle with different things, and different teachers saying, oh, they need to be on medications. And
well, I think every one of our kids were told that by some parent, some teacher somewhere along the
line. And,
well, the crazy thing is sorry, I don't want to cut you off. I just want to say this, that schools, get paid more money if they have more kids on medication. And so there's in the past, there, I know this was a fact in the past. I can't say this is a fact 100% today, but I still believe it is. But there's pockets of places that like half the kids or more in the school are on medications because those schools get government subsidies for the more medication.
Probably because they have to administer or something.
Stuff like that.
But we are out of that loop, and so we don't really, because we don't have kids that are in the elementaries and all that kind of stuff, so we don't exactly know how. I
can't say that's going on 100% today, but I know in the past that was 100% something that was being done. Like there were and it was like counties. Like this county in Minnesota had 85% of their kids on medication, and the next county over didn't, and it was all because of the school district and the different things like that. So it's kind of crazy.
So what I was saying is that having all these kids going through them within the elementaries, and this is the type of when the kids are trying to find out themselves and what's acceptable, the social skills, all this type of stuff. And I had multiple teachers tell me that my kids need to be on medication. And I was like, well, maybe it's that we need to do something different to help them learn. And I ended up switching one of my boys to a different school. And, the very first school that they were at, I really liked the school. It's right by me. It was really convenient and nice to take them there. But their philosophy was that you put your kids into the special education part, whatever, and they were there most of the day, and only for 1 or 2 hours would they be in their regular classroom. And then I would go to parent-teacher conferences, and the teacher didn't know anything about him because he was most of the time in with the special ed people. And so then the thing is that because of that smaller group, he then wasn't learning all of the other things that come with it, because ADHD, that's when they're very hyper, right? He wasn't learning the social skills that go along with trying to learn. And so anyways, I ended up switching schools for him, and they had a different philosophy. They put somebody in there with him to help him, so he was integrated with the classroom. And you know what, and also he had a teacher that was like, he's like one of my brothers, and I'm just gonna scoop him up like a hen, and help him. And that year was such a huge difference for him, because here being so hyperactive within the class to then becoming one of the smartest kids in the class. Because why? We did something different. And that's what I love, why you are a coach of this, because it is about teaching us how to do things differently, because we're not broken. This is just how our brains are wired. And you know what? It can be one of the greatest gifts that we can ever have in our lives if we look at it that way, if we just learn to train it. So can you start telling us, like, what is it that you do to help people? It looks like you do a lot of stuff with coaching businesses, individuals.
Working with their brain, not against it kind of stuff. What are things like that we can talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, that story is awesome. You advocated for your son. He just needed that classroom support so he could, observe his peers, but with that extra support to kind of teach him the skills that he needed. That's often what ADHDers need, is to learn skills.
And there's definitely different levels. I mean, and honestly, it's really rough for teachers. Let's just be honest. I mean, you have 30 kids in your class, and you have 2 kids that are a pain in the royal rear end. I mean, how do you deal with it? Because you want, you're trying to do the best for everybody, and so if 2 kids are always disrupted, it's really hard. And so you feel for the teachers as well, because that's a reality, right?
100%. I was probably one of those kids back in the day. So, but yeah, to answer your question about how I help people work with their brains and not against it. So basically, many people with ADHD, they spend years and years of their lives trying to force themselves into these systems and these routines that work great for someone who's neurotypical, who has a neurotypical brain, meaning they don't have ADHD. And so, again, they white knuckle their way through planners and timers and maybe to-do lists that just aren't sticking. And so when we work with our brains, that means we're first understanding how our brain actually operates. So what motivates it? What's going to shut it down? What it needs to feel safe and regulated. And then once we know those things and we understand why we do what we do, then we build our life around that reality instead of fighting it. So it's like, I always think of like a cactus. If you put a cactus and wanted it to thrive in a forest, it would likely die. But you just put it in the desert where it belongs. It's the same plant, but a totally different outcome, right?
Right, and different environment.
Exactly. Exactly.
So what are some of the things that you're trying to do on a holistic side? Because that's what we're aiming for right here in this conversation is like because parents want to know, hey, what can I do? Because they've been taught and they've been told by teachers, by educators, by doctors that, oh, your kid needs to be doped up.
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of ADHD support, it kind of stops at the strategy level. Like here's a planner, here's a timer, peace out, good luck to you. Right, here's some pills. And strategies, believe me, they are so important. But if someone's nervous system is in that constant state of fight, flight, or freeze, or even let's say they're not sleeping, or they're just running on caffeine and shame, comparing themselves to everyone, they're not going to function. They're not going to use a planner, and it's not going to save them, right? So my approach looks at the whole person. Instead of working on just practical tools, we're going to work on mindset. We're going to work on nervous system regulation. And then there are so many lifestyle factors like sleep, getting movement, your nutrition, minerals and vitamins to supplement, right? Because honestly, a walk outside and a good night's rest can do so much for the ADHD brain and for someone to focus way more than any like color coded spreadsheet or a timer could do, right? So everything is connected holistically. We look at the whole body.
So when you say that, are you talking about like, okay, that you as let's just say a 15-year-old son that won't get his math done? Oh wait, that would be our son right now. Um, is it something okay like, hey, every 30 minutes you need to take a break. You need to go out there, play with the ball, do something, go on a little quick walk, then come back and they'll focus again. Is that kind of something that you're referring to, kind of thing, when you say that?
Yeah, absolutely that. Because it's a natural way to give him natural dopamine, which will help his attention come back. So all day long, our attention is waxing and waning, right? The human threshold is allegedly about 40 minutes long where we can sustain focus. Kids are obviously less. So if you're trying to get a kid,
And then if you're ADD, then it's like 2 minutes.
right, or the opposite could be like an hour and a half to 2 hours where you're hyper focused. It just depends on the situation, right? Your interest
If they're
level.
playing a video game.
Very fair. We know that it is an interest based nervous system, so we are more likely to do things that we're interested in than not. But exactly what you said, go get some physical exercise, go get some sunlight. Make sure you're eating, you have a snack to stabilize your blood sugars, right? There's a lot of things, but taking regular timed breaks so that you can go back to the math and sustain focus for another 25 to 30 minutes, cool. That's going to help your kid.
So
The more
what would you say would be the general, like, if let's, and is 30 minutes the proper time, or is it, do you just have to kind of figure that out? And then how much of a break is it like 1 to 5 ratio. So like if they study for 25 minutes, they need a 5 minute break. I mean, something like that. Is there any kind of a ratio that you've come up with, or is it just very dependent?
It's very dependent on the person and their kind of where their nervous system is at, and um, their energy levels for the day. But a general uh, answer is 25 to 5. So 25 minutes on, 5 minutes break. And everything is timed so that you can get back to the task. And the 5 minute break should never include screen time, just so we are clear. Screens will actually deplete your dopamine stores and make it significantly harder to engage in lesser stimulating tasks like math, right? Because you get this full blown stimulation of like fast, cheap content. And by content, I mean it's cheap dopamine, right? It's very short lived, but dopamine is what helps us to actually take action and initiate things. And if we dump it all out doing something very stimulating, something understimulating is going to feel like death. Or, well, that's kind of extreme, but like it's going to feel horrible.
I know it is, growing up, we didn't have to deal with this, that these kids are, the screens are, we just don't know how it's going to be affecting. Well, actually can see some things, how it's affecting, but we never had to have that type of distraction and have so much bombarding us at one time to be able to keep attention on something, because we have so many things now that are pulling everybody away. And it's even hard for us as adults sometimes, because we use, when it gets overwhelming for us, it's like, oh, I'll just look at some social media. Well, really, you should be out taking a walk and, trying to get that out, like you kind of said right there, that it's so easy for us to just pull out those screens, which then just compounds the problem of being able to focus, getting our creativity going, and being able to just, um, be able to just, think about what's ahead of us at that moment, because we're bombarding ourselves with these screens all the time, and that's probably what's compounding the problem of the ADHD, and why there is so many people, and why it's actually to a point where people feel like they can't even get on top of it anymore.
Mm-hmm. I feel so passionately about this subject. I have clients from all over the world, right? And of all different ages and screens. That is across the board what is, I feel like, lowering people's baseline of dopamine production, because you become so, when you get addicted to screens, you're chasing that dopamine and you need more of it and more of it and more of it, which lowers your own baseline, your own ability to produce. And we know that with ADHD, we produce lower amounts of norepinephrine and dopamine, which we need to focus and to initiate tasks, to have motivation. But we also struggle to regulate the release of them, right? And so screens are making that so much harder to focus, to feel pleasure, like normal amounts. We, in the 70s, they were all outside soaking up the sun and being very physical.
Well,
That's how they got
they were
their
creating their own games. They were doing all that stuff, and they were doing just other things to entertain themselves, right? I mean, you left in the morning and you said, "Bye, Mom." Maybe you'd come home for lunch, but other than that, you'd get home when it was dark and you were just playing out in the yard, or out at a friend's house, or, in the area, in the field. And it's just, we just have created, we just don't have that same environment anymore. I mean, which is sad in many reasons. So let me ask you a question on this. Is this, and you're afraid, welcome to say no, because I'm catching you off guard here. Parents, there's so many parents will say, "Oh, well, my kid can't focus on their math, but man, they can focus on that stupid video game for an hour." What is the reason for that? Because I've heard different things with that. Do you have
Yeah.
a thought
Oh yeah,
process on that?
absolutely. So
Please share.
yeah, that's we know that the ADHD brain will easily engage in tasks that are interesting. So there's some element of fascination. If there's a fun challenge or a fun competition, that's easy for them to do. If it's novel, new, or it taps into their creativity, or if it's urgent. So it's like a fire and it's last minute and it's like, now I'll do the task. So if a task does not fall into interest, challenge, novelty, or urgency, because we have an interest based nervous system,
Which,
ADHD
like a math class or something like that, doesn't for most kids, right?
for most kids,
Doing
exactly.
homework does not, oh, hey, that's really interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So it's that simple. Again, ADHD is the most outdated name for what is really going on. We can focus all day long. Our executive functions work beautifully if we have some element of interest in it. But if we don't, then it's like pulling teeth. So for a parent, that is so frustrating. You see how capable your kid is in one area and they fall apart in another, and it's like this paradox I don't understand, but it's literally not your kid being willful. It's how their brain wiring works, right? It's if it's interesting, I will easily do it. If it's not,
So
I
the
won't.
next step is then what do we do? Like, how do parents deal with this with their kids? Because it can become a huge fight within the families of, frustration, and kids need to get their stuff done. And is it willpower? Is it them, standing up for their own willpower, and or is it them just not being able to learn how to cope with it? And what can parents do to be able to persuade them to do what they need to do, even though it's not something they want to do?
Yeah. So there are a lot of things. Um, First things first, just having a parent understand their kids, and that it's the child is not lazy. There's a neurological explanation, right? That's kind of first. Like parents have got to understand that, right? Very first. Um, but another way to get kids motivated is how can you make the task more fun or engaging or novel? So Kirk, I can't think of his last name. He's from the Calm Parenting podcast. He suggests having your kid do their math upside down on the couch. So their legs are up and their head is down and they're holding the book and engaging in a creative way, or taking the child outside on a blanket on the grass or just on the grass to do their schoolwork. Or things like, I don't know if this will be a video, but
Yeah,
using
we do this on YouTube as well.
okay, I thought so. So this timer, it's a time timer, and when I turn it, it shows red, and so you can see the time disappearing. You can see the red disappear, right? If I reach for it, I will become detached. So the point is using timers to create a little sense of urgency. It turns things into a game. Like, okay, I'm going to set the timer for 20 minutes and we're going to see how many math problems you can get through. And then we're going to try to beat your score. You can go get a popsicle, or you can, go play outside after that 20 minutes. So they have a reward associated with progress. But then gamification, turning it into something that's more novel, more fun, makes it way more engaging than just sit there quietly and do your math. Another thing is turn on some fun, upbeat music that maybe doesn't have the lyrics or vocals. It's just music. You can listen to lo-fi beats. Bilateral stimulation can really help. And it's just music in their ears to distract their brain just enough so that the parts of their brain that need to focus on the work can dial it in, right? So these are just ways to
Isn't there like something that like something hurts or something like that? There's things that you can listen to on YouTube or different things like that. Do you
ex-
have any suggestions on that? Isn't there a number as like that helps you focus and things like that?
yeah,
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about. I can't remember the hertz, but I do. If you do a search on YouTube and just say ADHD friendly music, Oftentimes they are tuned to that frequency, and it's very, very effective. So another thing is movement. So where, between a couple of math problems, you turn on some fun music and you just dance around, you be silly. That releases endorphins, the feel good hormones, chemicals, but also it gives dopamine. We need more dopamine to feel motivated and focused. So these are just a few tactics that can make boring things less boring and a little bit more stimulating or fun.
So
There's a long list, but yeah, that's
how
just
can we then, because these kids grow up and they get into the workforce, and there is a lot more than that's required and they can't get away with, but sometimes these behaviors that they have can actually interfere with their work. So what are some things then that they can do to bring it into the work, because their employers are not going to they're not going to take it for that long. And so really what it is, it's not the employers now that's going to babysit them like a parent would babysit their kids. Now you have to now come into your own recognition and your own way to be able to move forward within that company and show up at your best. So what is the way that now as adults that we can show up at our best when it comes to, our workforce?
Yeah, absolutely. It is all about learning skills to work with your brain, not against it. And so, what that would look like is when you have ADHD, you struggle with executive functioning. And I'll explain what that means. But executive functioning, you will struggle with one, some, or all of the executive functions of the brain. So, it's basically your brain's CEO, executive functioning, right? So it handles planning, prioritizing, getting started, shifting attention,
All the frontal lobe stuff.
managing your emotions, keeping the big picture in mind, all while you're performing small tasks. Okay. So in the ADHD brain, the CEO is often unreliable. But when we learn skills around time management, on what to do so you don't forget things, so that you have good follow through, so that you can be reliable, all of this can be learned. We were just never taught in school, kind of maybe conveniently, I don't know. But we're not taught these things, but we can be. We can learn to be organized. We can learn to plan out our day in a way that we will actually follow through. We can learn to be more motivated by working with our nervous system, making sure we're calm, making sure we have positive thoughts before we start a lesser desirable task. So there's so much that we can do, but it's deeply tied to interest, urgency, challenge, novelty, and your emotional state, right? So learning about which executive functions you struggle with, that's going to be key here. But also advocating for yourself. Let's say someone comes in the office and you're deep in thought. Well, ADHDers don't like to be interrupted. So if someone comes in, say, hold on just a sec. Can I finish my thought? Finish your thought. Maybe write a quick 1 or 2 word note to yourself so you can reorient yourself. Talk to the person, ask them for a paper trail. Can you write that down for me so I don't forget? Can you send that in an email so I don't forget? Like, you can advocate for yourself and ask for the things that you need. Can I please sit in an office that faces away from people walking past? That's very distracting for my brain.
Right, right.
Shane, you're
Squirrel,
laughing.
squirrel, squirrel.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So can I wear noise canceling headphones at work? Right? There are ways to learn skills, but also advocate for yourself so that your workplace knows that you're trying your best, and maybe you're not going to work the normal hours. You're going to work late into the night when everyone else comes early in the morning. But if you communicate those things, then oftentimes works or businesses will work with you because they see how talented you are, how great of an
Creative.
employee, exactly, of an employer you are, but you just need to do things in a different way.
Well, and let's be honest in a lot of aspects of this is because we almost make it sound like it's a bad thing, but people, I mean, and I don't have the numbers, but my understanding is, a lot of your, very successful people, all are people that have, ADHD issues, right? But they've been able to focus on the things that are important to them, that they do enjoy, and that's why they become very successful because they're able to do that, And it's kind of same thing with like dyslexia. Like Liz has dyslexia, and so a lot of people that are successful have dyslexia also because they've had to learn how to do different things differently in order to get the successes, right? And so we don't want to just act like this is something that is, oh, your kid is bad because they have this. We definitely want people to realize, like you've been talking about, hey, it's just a different way of looking at things. It's not the same box. It's not the same box. We want these kids, but it is frustrating as a parent. Like right now, we have a kid that didn't do. He had one online class, and he had to do 17 assignments in the last 2 weeks to get caught up, which is the dumbest thing in the world because these stupid teachers. Sorry, I shouldn't say stupid. These teachers let people not be on task. They let them turn everything in at the end. It's like, no, we used to lose percentage if we didn't turn things in on time, and now we've kind of created where they don't have to, and I think that leads to the ADHD thing because I think that's more common. So people just postpone, they procrastinate, right? But with that being said, it is very frustrating as a parent. It's like, just get it done. Every 2 seconds, like, dude, get off the phone. Why are you going out? It's like he's just wandering. But wait, we should have done that. You got 20 minutes. Take a 5-minute break. 20 minutes. And we know that, and we're still not even doing it right.
Because it is frustrating for parents, but you have to kind of step back a lot and look at probably the bigger picture and be like, okay, what is the best way to parent this? And you know, and also give them grace. And I think with this, it's not cut and dry of this. If you teach a kid this way, then this is how they're supposed to respond. That's how kind of the school system is set up, and that is probably why there is so many kids on it, because it's like if you have a class full room of 30 kids, you want the kids to, if you teach, for them to respond in an appropriate way. You don't want to have kids that have to be taught in all these different ways, and so you can totally see why they would want to resort to that, and why we had to have that so many discussions with our kids. And thank goodness we never went down that road. But sometimes parents get to the end of that road and they're like, this is, in order for us to even get by, this is what we have to do. And I'm not going to judge people that are at that stage, because it is hard to be able to do that. But there is options out here. There is options, and thank goodness, like, you are here showing them how to be able to do it in a different way, and to realize that their brains are not broken, that it just has to be a little bit function a little bit differently. And we started off talking about that son of ours that struggled. Well, by the time he was a senior in high school, he was taking like 3 AP classes, and he was just totally excelling because he learned how, and also teachers were giving him the tools to be able to learn, but he learned how to control his brain and use it in a way that now he is very creative, and he is he knows more stuff. Sometimes we say he knows more stuff about nothing or whatever than it's like, how did you know that? Because his brain has picked up different things along the way, and things that we haven't, but have.
But there are things of interest to him.
Yes, there are things that are interest to him, and so he knows a lot of stuff. And so what I want to have actually with this podcast is that our brains are not broken, right? Isn't that true?
Amen. Yes.
It's just learning how to deal with it.
Yeah, the
So
ADHD brain, sorry, the ADHD
go
brain
ahead.
in the right context, with the right support, the right systems, and the right kind of understanding, is often extraordinarily creative, right? We can be so empathetic, passionate, innovative. I mean, there's so many benefits to the ADHD brain if in the right context and situation.
So just in a quick, because we're about out of time here, but just in like in a couple minutes, what are things that you do that are like that are helping these kids? Like just in a quick nutshell to wrap it up.
Yeah. So to be clear, I help kids and adults of all
Okay. Yeah.
ages.
Mhm.
Yeah. So,
So
um,
anyway, yeah. Okay.
yeah. So typically, I help people understand their brains, really explain the science of what's going on in their nervous system, in their bodies, in their brains, to help remove this perception that there's something wrong with them. These are not character flaws. You being late or disorganized does not make you bad. Executive functioning is a moral neutral. So that's number one. You have to understand your brain, that it's not a you issue, it's wiring. Okay. Secondly, we're going to work on mindset and self esteem, because oftentimes with ADHD, you have received about 20,000 more negative critiques or, shaming words from well-meaning people than your peers by the age of 12. So we have to rebuild your self-esteem. From there, we look at which executive functions you're actually struggling with. If you are struggling with impulse control, mental flexibility, time management, and task initiation, then we are going to focus on teaching you how to work with your brain, what tools will work with those things. We experiment, we get really curious because it's not a one size fits all. Like, I can't just give timers to everyone because they don't work for everyone. They work for a lot of us, but not everyone, right? So we do a lot of experimentation to see, hey, does this type of planning system work for you? Let's try it out for a few days with a lot of accountability. When people work with me, I'm there to not only sit with them and educate them and teach them skills in our sessions, but there's follow up, there's accountability. I'm checking in on them. They're able to check in with me. There's a lot of support that way. But yeah, we teach the skills that they actually need. And then we will make goals around getting better sleep, around making sure they're getting enough of the right types of calories and the right kind of nutrients. We'll focus on, maybe I've said this already, but thought management. If you're constantly in negative thoughts and spiraling all the time, you're not able to focus and be productive because your brain is hijacked. So we have to work on nervous system management to help you to be able to function and even use the tools that we're teaching you. So that goes back to the holistic minded way that I coach. And I think that all ADHD should be approached in is looking at the full body, because there's so much that goes into managing our big, beautiful, busy brains. And every action is needed to
What
manage
are
it.
the most important takeaways that parents need to do in terms of like let's just or adults, like we saw a thing like one of our sons. He just all of a sudden he was 11 years old and he was our crazy kid. Like everyone knows he was the crazy one, but he actually made a choice to get off sugar, and he's been off sugar now for almost 9 10 years, 9 years now. And that's when his whole demeanor changed in terms of the hyperactivity. So sugar, I'm guessing sugar is a huge thing that people really need to control, especially in their kids. Are you seeing it with other things like you hear like with dyes, food dyes and stuff like that? What are some of the things that you've heard in terms of things that should be taken out of what people are bringing into their bodies?
Yeah, food dyes for sure, processed sugars. Um, I mean, a lot of over the counter medications are injuring gut biome. And we know that a healthy gut biome makes your brain so it works better. And so things, I guess, to the opposite of things not to do, things to do is get on a good probiotic, help your gut biome with, you know, uh, kimchi or sauerkraut, things like that to help your gut biome be healthier and strong. Screens. Friends, screens are ruining our kids' ability to think, focus,
socialize, everything.
Everything. Screens.
Social skills.
Amen. That is a really important thing. We need to limit screen use, and not all screens are created equally. Long-term or long-form content is so much better than short form. Still not good, but they're healthier choices when it comes to screen use. But limiting the time. And when kids are emotional, don't allow them to turn to screens to cope. Help them work through their emotions through mindfulness, through communication, through, cognitive behavioral therapy tactics, or sitting quietly, journaling. There are healthier ways. So, I mean, I could go on and on about how to manage ADHD, but really sleep, nutrition, exercise, even 10 minutes of cardio does wonders for the ADHD brain to help with focus and sustained attention and mental clarity, and just boosts our energy. So like, get sunlight, get outside, be physical,
Well, you have, it looks like for our audience, you're going to give them a special. Do you want to say what that is?
Yeah. So if you are wanting to learn more about ADHD coaching for yourself, for your kids, teens, college students, I'm offering $100 off of any package that I offer. I typically offer 6 session packages or 12 sessions, just depending on your needs. But I'd love to meet with you first, see what you need, and then offer you that for listening in.
And good fit and everything. Nice.
Absolutely,
well,
that's key.
Yeah, it is. It is. So once again, we are so grateful that you have come on our podcast. We met at the Be Healthy Utah conference. You came on board this year as a vendor, and we actually you spoke too.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're grateful for that. And before the podcast, she was telling us we really should have you put a plug in on how awesome the conference is, because you did say that, but no.
I did, and I'll say it again. You guys, that was the most beautiful display of just different options for living a healthier life. So if you didn't go this year, they have one coming up in St. George, but then come next year. And vendors, hey, I got so much exposure, so just saying.
And you meet other awesome vendors as well.
Yes,
and
yes,
most of our vendors are like you in the aspect of, it's either a product or a service that you had to have in your own life to get yourself better, and that's why they're passionate about what they're doing.
So where can people find you at?
Yeah, I'm at ADHD Kelly, and that's Kelly with a Y.com. So ADHDkelly.com. On Instagram, I'm also at ADHD Kelly. And then on Facebook, I'm Kelly Dyches, and Dyches is DYCHES. So come find me, come talk to me, ask me your questions. I love to help people for free. I love to give out content and share what I know, because if it can help more people, then that's what this is all about. So yeah. Thanks for having me,
thanks
friend.
so much. Yeah, hey, thanks so much for being on the podcast. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys.
All right.
Have a good day.
See you later, Kelly.
Bye.
Okay, perfect. Good job.
Simple and easy. And it goes by fast. Like, we're probably overtime, but also...
Your health journey is between you and your healthcare providers.
So remember, this podcast is for educational purposes only.
To stay up to date, visit us at BeHealthyUtah.com.
And please subscribe to our newsletter, where we give additional health information, health tips, as well as recipes.
Thank you to our 2026 sponsors.
We truly could not do this without them.